Good morning, Baker University economics students. It is Sunday, January 15th, 2023, so I hope everyone is having a good weekend. Perhaps some of you have off Monday. I know that's not always the case in the corporate world, but I do have off Monday, so I'm going to try to catch up on some things for around the house and just general work. But for this week, we're going to rinse and repeat again, so you still have the MyLab, MyEcon Lab, continue with that. Good job with the forum discussions. Like I said last week, I responded about half of you. I'm going to respond to the other half this week. And then if I get an opportunity, maybe one of the following weeks, I'll try to get to everybody again. We'll just see how things progress. But the two main chapters you're going to be looking at this week is first, chapter 6, dealing with elasticity of demand. And by definition, elasticity of demand is the percentage change in quantity demanded over the percentage change in price. And just a basic concept of this, think of that if prices go up 10% and the percentage change in quantity demanded goes down by 20%, well, in absolute value, even though it's a negative number, absolute value of 2, we'd say that, hey, that's elastic demand. People are highly responsive. But something like that, say let's say $4 tomorrow, and it's about 3 something now. Well, that's a
25% increase, but there's almost no change. Well, that's highly inelastic demand. So even though price went up a lot, it's a very small percentage change. It's very inelastic. So as managers, we're interested to understand in the markets, obviously the availability of substitute goods come into play, but the bottom line goal is to increase revenues, maximize your revenues to maximize your profits. So they're going to see certain products and services in your firms that have more inelastic demand and others more elastic demand. So think about just like an airline. There's going to be people that want to travel first class and the people that want to shop around like me to try to find the lowest possible flight. So if I have many months in advance, I have more elastic demand, but if I have to get on that flight, sign that contract tomorrow, I have highly inelastic demand. So airlines will purposely set aside the right number of seats based on historical data and pricing to maximize the revenues on that flight. Two things I want you to also think about too is extreme cases. So when we get to perfect competition, you're going to have a demand curve that is perfectly flat. Think of it like as horizontal, okay, and that's what we call perfectly elastic. And then you might have an extreme case where it's a straight up and down line that's perfectly inelastic. But the reality is that it comes somewhere in between that. Like I mentioned, gasoline might have a very steep demand curve, where if there's a lot of substitutes in the market, it's going to be a relative flat curve facing that firm. You're also going to look at what we call the cross-price elasticity of demand to understand that if a price of one good goes up, say gasoline goes up quite a bit, probably the demand for SUVs and trucks are going to go down. So we know these two goods are tied together. So the cross-price elasticity calculation is negative. It's a complementary good. If, let's say, Magic Puffs gets expensive and we see people buy more Lucky Charms, we know that it's a substitute good. Income elasticity says that as my income goes up, as long as it's a normal good, I'll buy more of that good. So it's a positive thing. But if my income goes up and I buy less of that good, then I'm looking at an inferior good. So inferior good to me were like when I was in college eating ramen noodles or low quality brand ketchup. You didn't have a lot of income, so I would go down to Aldi's and buy the cheapest stuff that I could find when I was going to school in Warrensburg, Missouri. Okay, with chapter 10, you're going to look at utility theory. And utility is, think of this as how you derive happiness or satisfaction out of consuming a good or service. So this is all going to vary for individuals. You could say, why would anybody pay $5 to $10 every morning going through Starbucks? That doesn't make rational sense, but you know what? It maximizes their happiness, and Starbucks is doing a very good job at doing that. So they're willing to pay, that much for coffee every year. It's no different than a guy going into a bar and paying $5 to $6 for a beer. Somebody could argue that why don't you just go buy the beer in large cases and consume it at home? You could save money, but people are buying the experience. And that's a lot of what, today it's about consumer experience and the services that we provide in our economy. So firms have to figure out, what maximizes customer's utility, their level of happiness. There's a lot of different factors. That's usually where management comes into, making decisions about planning, organizing, the leadership, the scheduling, the controlling, to kind of make sure that the product or the good of service that we're giving to consumers is maximizing their utility. So, but with this, what you're going to look at, kind of like theory, you'll have things like marginal revenue, marginal utility of good X over the price of good X, the marginal utility of good Y over the price of good Y. And you're kind of giving these choices. If it was a Big Mac, an ice cream cone, and you say you had $20, and let's say the Big Mac cost $2, it doesn't, but let's say it did, and an ice cream cone was $1, you would want to buy the sequence of goods that makes you happiest. So if a Big Mac of $2 gave you $20 of utility, 20 utils, this is a fictitious thing, but we have to kind of put a incremental amount on it, and the ice cream cone gave you 5 utils. Well, if I took 20 utils divided by 2, that's 10 utils per dollar, and the ice cream, if I took 5 utils divided by 1, that's only 5. So my first choice would be that I'm going to pick a Big Mac. And what's going to happen is that the law of demand would say that as I consume more Big Macs, my utility is going to be diminishing. I'm going to be like, I want something different. I want a Coke or an ice cream cone. So the theory is that you continue to consume these things to kind of maximize your bang for your buck. And then the textbook is going to get into this idea like the income effect that says, hey, most of us have incomes that are fixed in a given year. We have constraints. And then if I have these constraints, then if the price of one good drops, relative to my income, that's made me wealthier. Or the price of the good goes up, it's made me poorer. So I'm going to make decisions based on that. And then you also have a substitution effect that ties into the price of other goods. So if I'm making comparisons between say the Big Mac and the ice cream example again, I'm going to make those decisions based upon the substitution effect. So making more or less one good expensive to other goods. So again, if the price of Big Macs drops compared to ice cream, you're going to consume more Big Macs. Now the interesting thing is that let's say that the price of Big Macs did go up to the $5, and you still had that same budget constraint. You would make different choices. But let's say that I gave you enough money to compensate for the increase in price. I just kind of gave you the dollars to make up for this. What's interesting to find out is that you're going to make different choices because the relative prices have changed, and that's what this theory looks at. The last in this chapter is going to look at a little bit of behavioral economics. I think I've talked about this in kind of the beginning of the course, but there's the rational side of thinking. There are rational economists, there are behavioral economists, like Richard Thaler. He's won the Nobel Prize in economics, and he's done a lot of work on this, looking at the choices that people make. And Nudge is the name of his book. If you ever want to check it out, MBA students, it's a pretty good book of trying to get people to steer in particular directions. And one of the things that the federal government and state governments are trying to focus on now is getting to the point where retirement savings is an opt-out thing. They're asking companies to say, hey, just go ahead and roll people in these retirement plans, because left on their own, they're not going to make good decisions. I think one of the pitches out there now is that it would increase like 1% every year until you get to the maximum of 15%. But if you just do something for people, a lot of times they just accept whatever it is, and making them opt out of something is harder because it's behavioral. And you're going to read things about the endowment effect. Say, let's say I gave you a gift and it was a beautiful Baker mug or something like that, or one of those nice, maybe like the Yeti style. What they find in these behavioral experiments is that you almost automatically increase the value of that item because it was something that somebody gave to you. So the value sometimes may even go up 50%. You'd always be willing to sell it at a higher price, even though it's the same good. So there's things like that will happen. Or if when I go shopping at Hy-Vee, they're focusing on my generation, where most of the income is, and they're pumping 80s music in the store to make me feel better. So a lot of what marketing does, and we are human. We are based on emotions, so emotions matter. We're altruistic. We care about what other people think. So that can sometimes influence our decisions that we're making, even though they may not be rational. And there's a whole branch in theory that looks into this and questions even whether the stock market, it's rational or not, because during the subprime crisis, a lot of rational economists say it was a black eye on us because we didn't see it coming, but people were bidding up home prices to irrational levels that made no sense, so. Okay, well, that's it for this week, but do email me if you have any questions. I'll try to get everything graded by Tuesday. But after this week, we're happy to be done with the course. So just keep plugging along and keep thinking about the task stream assignment. Devote a little time to that each week, so it's you don't have to spend so much time on that week. So take care.